I've been meaning to film this video literally the day that I found out that BookTube was a thing. Today I will be talking about and going through a long list of LGBT young adult books that I think that you should read if you're into young adult or, you know, gay representation. Honestly, most of these YA novel types, besides a couple like honorary mentions, I guess, that don't really fit into necessarily like the genre specificness that this video is after, that I think I'm gonna mention towards the end. I'm basically just gonna be going through books that I've enjoyed that feature lesbian and gay or bisexual characters. So the first book I'm going to talk about today is Aristotle, I'm kind of saying that weird. Aristotle and Dante Discover the Secrets of the Universe. And I'm sure you've heard of this book, like if you are on BookTube or like exist in the world, because it has won a shit ton of prizes clearly and seems to be pretty well beloved. And I just wanted to throw this out there because this is like one of my favorite books of all time. If you haven't heard about what it's about, it is basically following the friendship of these two Mexican-American boys in El Paso in the 80s. And it's kind of a slow summary, not like summary with an E, not with an A, like not a summary as in the season, not like a synopsis. It's like a cute summary read with some great writing and a lot of dialogue. Like honestly, it's a pretty quick book to get through because so much of it is dialogue, and even though it's not that plot heavy, I find that even my friends who like are really into YA books that are even like fantasy, like, you know, stuff that's like really chock full of plot, seem to love this because of how beautifully these characters and these relationships are drawn. And one of my favorite parts of this book is these main characters' relationships with their families and with their parents, and how both complicated and like comfortable they are. Highly recommend this. I think anyone could enjoy it. People who read like literary fiction, people who read young adult, people who read like anything, I think would really enjoy this. I'm gonna put this back on the shelf. Clearly, my YA LGBT books take up a significant section of my like pretty small bookshelf. So the next book I'm gonna kind of go through this in probably order of like relevance, maybe, because there are a couple books that like I can quickly go through that I'm sure you've heard of already because they're like really popular and really talked about. So Carry On by Rainbow Rowell, of course. This is a young adult fantasy novel that's kind of like a spin-off of Harry Potter, but like Harry Potter if Dreary was real. And pretty like the audience this appeals to is pretty niche, but I think that it's really fun. Like the characters are great, and just a wild ride. I did not like the sequel, which is called Wayward Son, and I made a video that's like 20 minutes long talking about why I don't like it, so if you want to watch that, you can. There's that. And the next book I'm going to talk about is Autobiography by Christina Lauren. Oh my god, this book had me crying. It just grabbed my heart, and the day after I read this book front like cover to cover, I woke up again and I had to reread it. So I reread it literally the next day. And the thing is that I don't really do rereads, like even if I love it, just because I think like a lot of the time the first time experience adds to the joy of consuming the content. But after this, like it just stayed on my mind so hard that like I had to reread it. It's basically about these two boys who are in Salt Lake City, Utah, like very Mormon area, and one of the boys is like very Mormon, very religious, and he's like the son of some sort of religious leader in the area, and he's like really well known because he published a book a senior year of high school. At these two boys like school, there's this creative writing class where you like write a novel throughout the course of the class. Good Mormon kid guy. I'm really bad about names too, and like characters' names, so just bear with me. So he's coming back like the next year to TA the class, and in this class, how many times can I say class? In this class, there's another character who is not really that Mormon and who had only moved into the area from San Francisco like a couple years ago, and he's bisexual, but like he's not really out in Utah because why would he be? They get involved in a relationship, and you know, it's just really cute. There's like kind of a love triangle situation, so if you don't like that, like, I still think it's worth a read, but a very cute story that I think addresses like the topic of how religion impacts like sexuality and self-identity and community. I think it talks about it well, and it's just such a cute book. Ugh. I think that anyone who just needs something like cute to read, like a romance, like I'm not the big into romance, but this book is so good. Okay, the next book I'm gonna talk about, I don't have it with me, but you've for sure heard about it because it's The Seven Husbands of Evelyn Hugo by Taylor Jenkins Reid. You already know what it's about. I say that and then I like jump into a synopsis. Basically an interview of a Hollywood starlet from like the mid 20th century, and she's bisexual, and that's like one of the plot points in the book, so definitely go read that. I really enjoyed it. A quick read, a wild ride. Love that Hollywood glamour, that like the closeted gays who are really famous. Anyway, there's that. The next book I want to talk about is like a duology, I guess. I mean, they might be coming out with other books, but I don't know. But it's I Hate Everyone But You and Please Send Help by Gabby Dunn and Allison Raskin, who are like my favorite comedians ever. They have a YouTube channel that's not that active anymore, and a podcast called Just Between Us, and they're these comedians who are just so fucking funny, and I adore them, and I have adored them since I was like in middle school. I've been watching their videos for forever, and these books are basically like told in an epistolary style, entirely from like, as the reader, we are entirely like consuming the story from their emails to each other, like their messages back and forth, and it's just very funny, and the two characters are like clearly kind of foils for the authors, and if you know their personalities, you kind of like know that they're kind of like an odd couple kind of comedy duo, and it really shows, and basically one of the characters discovers her sexuality in college and realizes she's bisexual, and like, you know, all of the craziness that comes with that. So really enjoyed these and would recommend if you want like a funny, lighthearted, quick read that features some good bisexual rep and is kind of like tragic and gripping in the way that friendships can be and feel like. So yeah, the next books I want to talk about is also in a series. It's Mackenzie Lee's The Gentleman's Guide to Vice and Virtue and the latest guide to petticoats and piracy. So I just finished this book like the other day, and if you saw my Goodreads review, which was like really long, you'll know that I absolutely fucking adored it. And when I read this, like, I adored it as well. I mean, I still do, of course, but like these two books, these two books have my heart. Like, I am a slut for historical fiction, like when it's done well, featuring characters that are not boring, and these two books are definitely that. So The Gentleman's Guide to Vice and Virtue features a bisexual main character who's like this white dude in 18th century Europe who's like a bit of an alcoholic and has a huge flaming crush on his best friend who is half black, and they go into kind of discussing their friendship and how they grew up together in the book. And like, the book does a really good job of, I think, talking about race in Europe in the 18th century, which I think a lot of historical fiction books set in this time period featuring like aristocratic characters like these tend to just glaze over, because there's just this assumption that like black people did not exist in Europe, which is not true. So there's that wonderful representation, of course, of Mr. Bisexual Monty Percy, who is kind of insane, crazy, very funny, like so hilarious, but also fucks up a lot and like learns a lot. Like, he grows a lot and he deals with, actually, I think this is important that to know, like, some trigger warnings for like child abuse and just abuse in general that Monty deals with. And basically, I'm talking about this for way too long, but basically in the 18th century across Europe, when like aristocratic dudes became like 17, 18 and like finished their schooling, they all went on like the grand tour of Europe, and they would just go across Europe. And basically his best friend Percy and his sister Felicity are all going on this like tour, but stuff goes wrong, and that's where the story goes off. The next book in the series is following Felicity, who is the sister of Monty, and Felicity is like, how do I say this? Kind of a stone cold bitch, but like in the best way possible. She's very intelligent, super into science, and throughout Gentleman's Guide and this book, of course, we see how deeply she is invested in trying to become a doctor. Like, she just wants to be a doctor so fucking bad, but she like realizes throughout the course of this book and in the other one how futile that is and seems to be for her as a woman in 1700s Europe. And this book kind of explores the aftermath of the events of the Gentleman's Guide, and she is basically on a journey to pursue her medical career, which seems more and more unreachable every day. But she runs into some pirates, some potential love interests, some old friends, and a great like lesbian asexual kind of representation. Just such a fun, wild ride, like even more fun than Gentleman's Guide. Okay, now we've gotten through the YA books that I have, and so let's talk about books that I do not have with me. The Miseducation of Cameron Post by Emily Danforth. It's an exploration of this girl who lives out in like the country and her coming to terms with her sexuality as a lesbian. Both her parents died in a car crash when she was like 10, so she's living with her super religious aunt, and her aunt is like, "You're gay? No. You are going to camp." So half the book is set in her at like anti-gay Christian therapy camp, and the first half is like kind of exploring her own childhood and growing up and her discovering her sexuality amidst this like Montana rural Christian backdrop. Oh my god! How can I forget to talk about this one? I really wish I had a physical copy with me, and I really wish I started out with this book, because then like I could have started off with something less mainstream as all of these above, because I feel like these are all books that like people talk about so much on BookTube. But Full Disclosure by Cameron Garrett. Oh my god, such a good young adult read. I'm obsessed with this book. Basically, we follow this main character who has HIV, and that is one of the biggest themes and plot points within the book, because she basically is getting with this guy, but then she gets blackmailed. Another student at her school being like, hey, you need to stop seeing this guy or else I'm gonna tell the whole school that you have HIV. So, I mean, it kind of, okay, I hate to say it, but it kind of reminds me of Simon versus the Homo sapiens agenda, which I'm not gonna recommend because everyone's recommended it and it's like really not that good. Anyway, I digress. The main character, she has 2 dads, gay parents, woo! She is like just moved to a new school because at her old school she got outed and shit went crazy, so she's in a new school now and she's with friends who like don't really know about her status, and she's also kind of like coming into her sexuality as well, and one of her best friends is a lesbian. Yeah, like there's just all around great representation. Like all of the main characters are characters of color. The main character and her love interest are both black. I think one of her best friends is Hispanic, one of her other best friends is Asian, and one of her dads is black and the other dad is Latinx as well. And I really recommend everyone read because I don't think it gets enough hype, and also a lot of young adult is kind of out of touch, especially LGBT young adult books, because it's written from the perspectives of like 30, 40, 50-year-old white women who are like writing their like MLM romances. But Cameron Garrett was like 19 when she wrote and published the book, which is crazy. Okay, so now let's get into the not YA but LGBT rap that you should read if you like YA. The Song of Achilles by Madeline Miller. Of course, it's a retelling of the Iliad in some bits, and it's about Achilles and Patroclus's relationship, and whew, it's so good, so good. I want everyone to read it. It's like, I think it's like adult, but it's the language and the writing and the characters I think would still appeal to young adult readers. Okay, getting into the graphic novels and stuff. So Laura Dean Keeps Breaking Up With Me, a great lesbian comic that is just beautiful. Personally, I didn't really resonate with it as much, but I'm still recommending it because it's still a great book. It's still beautifully illustrated, and the story is basically just like, there's this girl who's kind of an asshole who keeps breaking up with like her girlfriend. Her girlfriend is like, what the fuck am I supposed to do, for most of the book. So it's that, basically. The next graphic novel, young adult LGBT book I want to recommend is Bloom by Kevin Panetta, which is the story of an immigrant family, and they run a bakery, and the son is like, oh, I don't want to do this shit, but like he has to because it's a family business, and there's like this other local guy who gets hired somehow, and it's about their like blossoming relationship over the summer and them trying to figure out their lives and, you know, coming of age and family and, you know, all that good stuff. So I'd recommend that one. And of course, Heartstopper by Alice Osmond, the webcomic that is also bound in books. I think volume 1, 2, and 3 are all out. I read volume 1 and 2. Oh, so good, so cute. It's about these 2 high school boys. I think it's in England. Their relationship, and one of them is like unsure about their sexuality and like kind of figures that out as it goes along. And the other one is gay and out, and he dealt with some harassment and bullying at school like in the years before. But it's just such a really cute high school love story. On a Sunbeam by Tilly Walden. Also Spinning by Tilly Walden. Both such good books. In On a Sunbeam, they're kind of living on this giant spaceship. It's this motley crew of young people, mostly, who kind of go from like planet to planet, like fixing stuff up, but it's like not told in chronological order because we jump between that perspective and the perspective of like years before, when one of the people on the crew was like at like an all-girls school. This was kind of a confusing read for me, but I still really enjoyed it because the art is just so fucking so beautiful. But the LGBT rep, that's what I need to get into. So the 2 women who like kind of run the whole ship are lesbians, and one of them is the aunt to another character on the ship. And I think the main character is also a lesbian. And another character on the ship is non-binary, and they are also mute, so they don't speak. Yeah. read this if you're down for a spaceship graphic novel ride with all female and non-binary characters. Art is amazing, highly recommend. Spinning by Tilly Walden is such a good book. I'm so sad I don't have it. I need to go get it. It's basically about this girl who is an ice skater and kind of her coming of age with ice skating being like the core part of her identity and her life, and her discovering her sexuality along with that. So really good book. I like sat down and read it through in like 1 hour, which like you can do with a lot of graphic novels, but it was really gripping, and it deals with a lot of like, it talks about a lot of issues. I forgot to mention this other young adult novel before, which I don't have on me, so jumping back to that. Pet by Kweki Ameze. Oh my god, I talked about it in my last video when I talked about books that I read for Black History Month. Pet is a speculative fiction kind of universe. It's only 200 pages long, really short, really fast read, highly recommend. It's a really good book, follows this main character who not only is trans, but like the book does not really, the plot in the book doesn't really focus on that because that's not the point of the book, and she also uses sign language. She's not mute, but she was just like raised with it, and so she just uses it for a lot of the book, which I think is really cool, and yeah, highly recommend. Going back to graphic novels, The Prince and the Dressmaker. I honestly don't even know if this counts as like LGBT rep, because how much is like cross-dressing, quote unquote, like queer or like LGBT? I don't know. It's like not that clear, but it's also set in a time of like once upon a time far, far away, and the art's really cute. So yeah, quick read, highly recommend. It's basically about this prince who at nighttime loves to wear dresses and become an alter ego, and he develops a friendship and kind of like falls in love with this dressmaker who helps him with this. So the last book I'm going to recommend is really like a bonus because it's neither young adult nor fiction, but I still think it's a really important read, and if you are LGBTQ or like a woman, I really, and or both, what, wow, you can do that. I highly recommend you read Is Gender Fluid by Sally Hines. It's a short little read with a lot of pictures and graphics, and it's lots of statistics and cited papers and cited research and theories. Very cool kind of look into gender theory and understanding gender as an identity and as like a social construct, and its connection and removal with sexuality. I think it's a really good book because it offers a lot of perspectives, and like global perspectives as well, that, and doesn't really necessarily say like one thing is right or wrong. It's just like, this is the research, this is what people say, this is what academics and theorists have been saying for the past 10, 20, 30, 40 years, and take that as you will. It's a really short book, highly recommend people read. I just wish everyone could read this so I could hear less like stupid comments about trans people in my classes at school. Like, just be less stupid and like read a book. That basically wraps up all of the books I would like to recommend if you are into like YA LGBT stuff, as well as some like extras. So hope you enjoy. Hope you read these books. Let me know what you think. Also, friend me on Goodreads. Like, link is in the description or whatever. And yeah. Bye.